everything back and, oh.
Rob and I put
God.
chairs away.
I bolted.
You're smart.
I didn't think about it for that reason, but I.
Thank you.
Like, there were like 15 minutes left in the time frame that we had, and I thought, I don't want somebody to say we really stretched this out to 4 o'clock.
Saying the suit ready to go this year?
Since it looked like we were wrapping it up, I said,
Remember that?
I'm gonna go before they can call me back.
That was actually a good idea.
Vital Communities.
Okay, so- Oh, are you recording? Yeah, I know.
Yes, we are.
Yes, you are. Okay.
I'm okay. I have what I
You
need.
got what you need.
So we are the Master Planning Task Force. It is the 14th of November. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:01. Task Force members present. From my left, Seeley,
Celia Alfiero,
Maynard Southern.
David Frack,
Lindsay Smith.
Bill Vermeer,
Brad Rich.
the one,
Bridget
I've got them now,
and who's on Zoom?
With the agenda.
yes.
Randy Saxton.
Okay. And staff members, Rob Taylor and Whitney Banker. Agenda is pretty straightforward. It's reviewing what happened yesterday, discussing, making any modifications that we think are necessary. First real order of business is approval of our previous minutes. Does anybody have any comments, changes, corrections?
I had no significant changes, a couple of spelling things, but that's it.
And I apologize for them getting to you late. She provided them very timely, but we actually had serious internet problems here. Beginning of Wednesday of last week, and we finally resolved them at about 10 o'clock this morning, so.
Up to me soon enough.
Anybody have anything, other comments on the minutes?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes as is.
Motion
Second.
made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Abstentions?
Abstained.
2 abstentions? Okay,
Bridget and Phil.
okay, so we had what I thought was a very productive session yesterday. We had probably 15 people attending, either in person or on a Teams link. Brad took some very good notes.
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah.
Come on, I'm trying to butter you up.
Better
Um,
notes than we did.
So why don't we
You're so
start,
busy, Lindsay.
why don't we start at the top and read off your notes and we'll see what the comments are and kind of
So-
discuss and go from there.
Yeah, the first thing I had was on visioning, and you guys, I'm sure will remember this. And we've heard this before, the responding to change versus managing change. We talked a lot about that. And, the current document says managing, and we've talked about this at one of our previous meetings, and manages, and I think that's probably denotes non-reactionary type of, language that we want as opposed to responding to change. I think we had settled last time around that we left managing in because we wanted to be proactive where we could, as opposed to just responding.
It was interesting to hear that come up, and I was glad we had already addressed it in evening. I mean, I understand how some people think manage, they connote it to be dictate. But it also means anticipate. And I think we've all gotten comfortable with the idea that that's the use of the word that we're focusing on. There's not really a bit.
I also got, I got an email from someone who gave some feedback that way. And also mentioned the word, the managing. Doesn't like the phrase manages change, and the vision implies a change is something inevitable that must be managed as opposed to something to be embraced. That was so it came up twice, but yeah, we have discussed it
could go round and round, and some days.
Are
the
we
coin
still all
is gonna-
comfortable with managing?
gonna wind up on heads. I think management is the way to go.
Proactive versus reactive, right?
Mhm.
Doesn't have to be descriptive. It's,
Rob, you just hit on something. What if we said proactively manage change? Does that help in any?
I want to also, that, so this was the, overall, the other thing that struck me is as people were offering stuff, and we have also struggled with this, or is erring on the side of adding too many words, to keep adding stuff to further, and, what I think, so keeping it more simple. We already had a lot of words, and I felt some of the comments, while they're good to chew on, do we add more words? Again, so that's where that came up in something else. If we get down to another phrase.
what else have we got, Brad?
Also on visioning, there was a couple of people that when they read the downtown,
Yes, here's the other one.
right, vitality, they thought maybe we should include the phrase Enfield Center or another sort of statement that includes Enfield, as opposed to just downtown.
Can I make a suggestion here?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
One way to think about that might be to change the word downtown to village, because in the plan, we've used village to refer to all three centers. Whereas when we refer to downtown, it's just Enfield Village, typically.
For me.
I like that. Or what is, do we mean downtown or village vitality, or do we mean economic? I think that was my other thought, was economic.
No, it was really downtown revitalization
Okay,
was the original. No, it wasn't economic broadly. It really was the core concept of, there should still be commercial activity in Enfield Village. But the point being there are businesses in the other two centers as well. So we could broaden that out.
village vitality.
That works for me.
For me.
We have to.
No, we don't.
No, I think you just, take
Do
a
It's wordsmithing, that's all right.
Yeah,
consensus of comments. I didn't hear anybody violently object, so let's move on to the next, Brad.
Yeah, that was it for visioning. The general principles, the first one I had was, there was a bunch of discussion about the water resources. And I think the point that we ended up settling on was that it needs to be data driven. And I think that we were sort of all nodding our heads when we heard the term data driven in terms of protecting the natural resource, especially the water.
I thought that discussion broadened out to include the entire plan,
I thought so
that
too.
that
Yeah.
decisions be
Yeah.
data driven.
I thought it was a very good point, one over here
Yes.
made, that, and it seemed like as a guiding principle, talking about data really spread across all the areas.
Yeah.
We weren't talking about some of the specific things. It might very well be another principle we should be adding, at least referring to it somehow. Because number one, we've been doing it, we've been using a hell of a lot of it. And it's helped us.
And she mentioned that there was a lot of data, and we should probably mention the fact that there was.
How do people feel about adding data-driven decisions as one of our guiding principles?
Can I make another suggestion here?
Go.
please.
I don't know that it rises to the same level as the other guiding principles, but I think you could take that concept and work it into the intro statement, where you're discussing, like somewhere between pages 4 and 5, where you're discussing the plan, and add a sentence or two that makes it clear that the plan and its recommendations are based on data and, recommending a course of, I don't know, now I didn't come up with a nice sentence, but basically you're recommending the town make decisions from a place of analyzing available data.
I'm okay with that. I mean, I just think it's a point that we should be making in the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, if Brandy feels that it can be woven into the text, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, another comment that we got on the website was, it was more of just, what did they say? Start looking at the real needs of people in this town instead of your wants. So, and so I said, well, I answered it in the form of everything in the plan came from is data driven. It wasn't
Yeah, we
the,
did not invent it.
it was not the wants of the town. So, I mean, that was the only thing I could take from that. I said, if you have something more specific that you're not seeing, let me know, but that what was in the plan. So it's probably good to make sure that we reiterate it wasn't us 12 deciding what we wanted. I remember this room, I have no idea.
That kind of brings me to another question for Brandy.
Sleep hard.
There were several pages of survey results that I asked for that you sent to me and Lindsay on Sunday morning. Will those be integrated into the final document? And if so, where and how?
They are an appendices. They will be there. I hadn't gotten them. They haven't changed since you got them as a prior PDF. Although somehow I've managed to overwrite the land use one in that effort to rearrange everything. So I have to reconstitute that one a little bit, but they're going to be in an appendices, and so they'll be at the back. And then I know we'll probably get there, but since we're talking about where things are going, I had a question that arose from yesterday's meeting with regard to the implementation chapter and whether you want that removed from the plan itself and just as a standalone document. That's what I understood you to say, but I wasn't clear that was what you wanted to do previously.
I think that we have evolved to the decision that it should be an independent document, because if we change it, we won't have to wait and readopt.
Okay.
plan.
Okay,
Does
so those,
everybody agree with that?
I would,
Can it be an appendix? Or
The appendix would be technically part of the plan.
Say,
So-
I guess I would question where would people say like, well, how do I know that? If it wasn't in there somewhere, it's kind of
Right,
like,
but
here's the
the
original.
other problem is that we can't update
know, you
it
can't
and
change it.
change. And then do any sort of like, is this on task? Is this not? I mean, unless
Well-
we don't want to.
Can't you do that without making that part of the master plan?
I would think so.
In other words, you get to a fork in the road somewhere, you don't necessarily have to go back and change the master plan. You simply have whatever this new thing is as a separate thing.
That's what we're saying.
Mhm.
That,
And there's just a link to it.
Well, I mean, in theory, the implementation chapter is the recommendations, which are all at the end of every chapter that's in there. So it's not as though, and we discussed it being referenced.
And Ed
And
wants to
multi-
be able to reference it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I know Ed wants to be able to reference it, but I mean, I think it's in the plan too, that it's referenced within the plan, just so that people can make that connection. That's all I'm thinking is if someone was to pull out the plan or pull it up online or whatever and look at it, where would be the spot that points them to this kind of living document that is gonna get changed? Is it only gonna live with the town? Is it gonna live on the LEAP site? So as it's changed and it gets uploaded, like new versions get uploaded as it's, we work through it and develop it. That would be my one question of like, where can people get to it.
I think people would be able to access it on the LEAPS website. And, you know, it would just be, you'd have plan and implementation checklist or whatever, you know, whatever we want to call it. And that way there's two distinctly different documents. And, you know, obviously the town would have a copy of it or have it on its website or whatever. And it would be, you know, it would serve both purposes and not tie it into the plan formally. It's think of it as a tool.
Well, no, I do. I just also think about public opinion of, I want them to know that this is the thing that was developed and adopted from, and how do we prove it, right? We don't need this to be like, well, you wrote this plan, but now everything in this implementation is completely different than what was in the plan, and you're just doing your own thing and whatever, you know, again, the accusation of, we're not even us, but whoever gets it is just doing what they want as they go through. I'm just wondering, and maybe Brandy has the best suggestion of like, what's a good link to the plan to point people? If we don't put it directly in the plan, how do we just link it
So
throughout?
if you think that you want to be able to change the priority timing and provide this updated information, so basically changing the components that, if you're looking at that implementation matrix that are in the right-hand column on an annual basis, then I think what we should do is pull the entire chapter out, put some verbiage about implementation, essentially sort of what's there at the opening chapter, you know, the narrative paragraph at the start, put that back up in the front in the introductory material, and put a link to your implementation wherever you're going to have it sit, right? And then we'll take this table and put that in its own separate document. But that still leaves the problem of the recommendations not being numbered. So we'll have to get to that one when we get there. But if you think you want to change the content of the table over time, then I'd say we need to pull the whole thing out and just leave a little bit of background information and a link.
I'm a little concerned that if we pull this out of here, we're pulling some good meat master plan. And I'm wondering how likely it is that we're gonna make substantive change to it within 5 years.
Well, there was discussion yesterday that the recommendations and the matrix are sort of a starting point. And as different committees or groups get a hold of it, the tasks are gonna be broken down into, you know, more defined activities or goals. And it would be nice, I would think, to be able to update.
Well, why don't we handle it this way, to Maynard's point, why don't we put what we have in the plan? And then let Ed manage it the way he feels fit in terms of using it to drill down for budgetary and objective setting. And then as we go through these next chapters next year, if we need to update it, we'll update it. We're gonna have to go get approval anyways.
As part of the new chapter.
Yeah.
I mean, because that was the other part of our discussion is how does the plan, when, I can't remember who it was, asked, you know, when does this get updated? And when we talked about, we're gonna add 5 new chapters, so we're gonna have to re-adopt this again. So that would be a moment to see if there's any updates in that, the matrix that exists, plus adding. And then if we add more, you know, and then if literally, if the idea is to keep this in front and kind of do a chapter each year versus the more, common way of every 10 years redoing the whole thing, then you use that matrix and you can update any part of the matrix. If you're gonna be relooking at it every year, a section of it, you're almost gonna have to be readopting it every year
Yeah.
if you make
well,
changes.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I think it might be weirder to have it, I mean, I get it, having it out here so that it's workable. But, we're not gonna be updating it on a daily or on a monthly basis.
I think
I
it
mean-
has to be in the plan. I think that's
Yeah.
the priority.
But I think as long as we're describing it.
Yeah.
How?
I worry about giving one person like the town manager all the power to do everything
That's,
that where he's managed, and I'd like it open to bring in the committees and so on and so forth, because I just think that's dangerous. in
but
the
that
long-
is, so
I
that's
agree,
where
but I don't see that.
I
happening.
agree, but I think, I mean, first of all, it's his job as the town manager. He kind of has to help disseminate. But I think that's why it's important to put in that chapter in the plan, and I kind of, I think I'd mentioned this in an email, that we explained, like, the planning board is going to review this on an annual basis, or check in with the town manager on an annual, seeing what's the progress. We have this implementation plan, we have a matrix.
And the checks
What's
and
happening?
balances are there would be between the town manager and the selectmen. That's where you have the check and balance in terms of power.
Right. And
Well,
planning.
the other night at the selectmen's meeting, Ed asked to establish what Ryan had, which is the strategic plan, which you understand that.
Mhm.
And that involves, and get me if I'm wrong. The plan involves setting goals.
Mhm.
And he would be doing that. So if you have something in here that you wanna do, whether it's, oh, who knows, working on roads, or, putting in a sidewalk, where is it gonna be, and so on and so forth, that's a goal. So, all right, we're gonna do this, and he can directly go ahead and do it without community, or committee input. And I think that goes all the way across the board. That's where I am concerned about it, because I know that Ryan had full control of a lot of things. And,
But it's this, isn't it the selectmen's job, the select board, to check that?
It is.
I think so.
well, I
And
don't
so
know.
you've got three people that have been elected to make sure that the town manager is headed in the right direction.
Well,
And I don't
But that
think-
is their job. They are above him.
And I
that
don't think
is their-
I don't think that he has power to do whatever he wants, and not everything in that matrix is assigned to him. Most of it is him involved because that's the
Yes.
conduit of resource, but, he can't just do stuff. If he needs
Yes, he
money, he has to come to the town to get money. That has to be approved. He can't just do stuff. Now, it's not that way. I mean,
Also, he's asking for this guidance. I mean, he-
right, so he
he-
can
he
write.
Yeah, he wants
he's trying
to
to say,
push this down with.
Yeah,
through
I
objectives.
want to do what you want me to do, so give me something that tells
Yeah.
me what you want to
Mhm.
do. And when I apply for grants and everything, I can reference it so that I'm speaking for the people here, because here's the evidence that I'm doing it.
And if there's gonna be a strategic plan, he would need this. I'm guessing, that's his other
Right.
thought, is that he needs this to help create, because those would be, like you were just saying, right, the goals. He needs to know what the recommendations
Yeah,
are, so then
right.
he creates a strategic plan of how do we get to that how do we get that completed?
Now,
That would be his
well,
plan.
you take something like the recreation director in here. Recreation director, you can do anything under the recreation director.
With all that money we give.
Well, it will come, believe me.
what do you mean you can do anything as the recreation director?
Well, I've seen it grow. He's good,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's just grown like that.
sure.
He's got his irons in the fire all over the place. And, I noticed on the school is called the Muskoma Recreation.
No,
That's
that-
the way it's listed on the school.
it does
there's-
not exist any longer. So I can
Did
tell you.
they take it out?
When I held that position, because that was the position I was hired in initially, was the
Uh-huh.
Mascoma Recreation Coordinator. as of January 1 of this year, that no longer exists.
But it's still in there.
Well, the
It's
school, if
written.
it's in the school, it's because it
That's
hasn't
how
been
I saw
updated.
it.
But that no longer exists as of January 1, everything, because Enfield was the only one paying for that position.
I know that. yeah.
So that's when we combined it into Enfield Rec, and I held that until Kevin came along.
Right,
And that, I mean, that is your job as recreation. You have to have your fingers everywhere to
Yes,
know what's
I know
going on,
that.
because everybody wants to know what's happening. But he also inherited those activities as well, which some happen in Enfield, some don't, but the school, you know, all the towns are,
okay, so
obviously
they didn't
welcome,
take
so-
that out of the school. Cause it's listed in the school, it's part of one of their
What-
organizations or something.
Right, so,
Yeah, I-
okay.
But
That's what I looked at.
Yeah.
Over the
Say-
weekend,
Sealy,
so-
I think
School.
to your point, and maybe this, hopefully this will kind of button up this topic.
Okay.
The,
Take your words for it.
the town manager has to work within budgets. We have a budget committee. The town votes on a budget. So there is a lot of oversight into what the town manager can and cannot do. And I think that's the system that we work with. And unlike the previous strategic plan, which started out not with the town's master plan, but with the select board and some sort of a survey of some portion of the town residents. I feel very good that the work that we've been doing
Uh-huh.
gives a much stronger and more valid representation of the direction that the town wants to go
Yeah, no doubt.
than when Ryan was doing his strategic plan, which was, it didn't start at the right place.
yeah, I mean, this is, like, again, we do have to move on. This outlines a lot of different people. But that's the way the town works, is we have a few people to do most of the work, because we, as a town, can't be involved in every decision, but we are in certain places. And so that's the, and this does disseminate it, but also gives a baseline, like we've said what the priorities are. And so now, how that gets interpreted, there's room for interpretation, and that might cause some
Yeah.
tension, like, we want more recreation
Okay.
areas, so there's that kind of stuff,
Right.
but
One of them has a recreation committee involvement.
sure. And there's gonna be a lot of that, because we have a lot of
Okay.
recreating, but
So
are we leaving this in?
that I was saying, so
Yeah.
that would be my question. If we
Okay.
leave this chapter in, do we at least maybe adjust the very beginning paragraph
Okay.
where we would call out how this is reviewed, whether it's on an annual kind of as a guide to people. So the planning board is going to review this matrix or whatever on an annual basis. It tells people, like, hey, if you're interested, maybe look at the planning board agendas to find out when that's gonna be, so you attend the meeting, so they know, like, because obviously they hear about us as a task force and they forget who actually is gonna have oversight of this master plan. So just kind of that, like, guide to.
So adding another sentence in on just if there's a review process, or,
Yeah, I
Because it
mean, I think
says,
just
like-
guiding people, and then
Yeah.
we can say where you can find a living copy, or how,
The
if you
latest
wanna have a living
latest,
copy or the
whatever.
latest updates on the LEAPS website.
well, we can't have the latest updates, because that's the whole thing. Like,
If we have this in there, we can't. do
we
that.
can't have this is the latest update. But, and so that's,
Is there a reason why the town, i.e. Ed, couldn't have his version that updated more often than our
He
version?
can have his personal version and he can change it any way he wants.
'Cause yeah.
He's
No.
implementing the strategic plan. Well,
No.
No?
yeah.
Well, he can't have a document that he makes edits on so that he can then share with the planning board what's happening and what the updates would be on an annual basis.
What you could do.
I
is-
mean,
Oh, he
doesn't-
can do
doesn't
that
have to
as a
call it
worksheet.
You could
implementation.
leave the principles as is, and his could be called the strategic piece, which is the next level down, and he can do anything he wants with that and the selectmen and the chairs of the boards. So you leave the
Right, this.
implementation plan, you don't static, you don't change it, but he has the strategic plan, which is the next level down, and but he has to manage, right? So
Oh,
he
yeah.
needs that document in order to manage and in order to move all this forward.
Well, I was just saying, even if he wanted this to be his own personal document where he's taking notes, so that when the planning board goes to review it, he has an update, that would be nice to have part of the work done, but yeah, he would use it on a strategic plan basis.
So Brandy, you were saying something?
Oh, I misunderstood what you were saying.
Okay.
I thought that you were saying that the town manager could create a separate implementation matrix modified off of this one, but that wasn't what you were saying, so that's okay.
Yeah, no, not a separate, like, create. make
Yeah,
it up on its
so-
own, but
The one other thing I would raise, I do have concerns about the committing to the idea of updating on an annual basis. I think that over time, you may not be able to sustain that, and you also may find it's actually not advantageous. Because you need time to implement things in between, and if the planning board or other volunteer people are devoting themselves to working on the master plan sort of on a continuous basis, then the implementation projects suffer because there's only so much human time to put into them. So I've seen communities that have worked in that direction, and my impression has always been that they achieve fewer of the items on their list because they spend most of their time talking about the plan itself and working on the plan rather than actually doing the things that are identified in the plan. So I think it's okay to think that you're going to come back in and check on it. I just would avoid committing to this annual plan that you have been talking about.
yeah, I might not say edit it on an annual basis or update this, but I might just put my only annual basis thought was that the planning board might review it, and it could be that nothing has been started yet, or it's still ongoing, or whatever it is. It would just be are we using the document like we said? Are we actually checking in?
Yeah.
And, and it might not have started yet because of money or whatever.
I
Project
thought I heard that since we're going to be adding chapters to the plan in the foreseeable future, and adding chapters is going to require an approval process to incorporate new chapters. That opens a window that at any one of those times that we're amending the plan anyway, we could include any necessary changes to the implementation section, because we could have it approved at the same time. I didn't hear that we were talking about modifying the implementation section every year. I didn't even hear that we'd be adding chapters every year. I just heard that trying to piggyback on the fact that there will be approvals soon as we add chapters, so that would be that's why we won't take this out of the plan as a separate document, leave it in there, because we know we will have times when we can come along and make changes to it because we're going to get approval to add chapters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna add chapters every year, but for at least the next, well, 2, if, or however long it takes to do the next section of 5, and then if we need some more, and then that should hopefully be,
We're
all the
looking
chapters.
2 or 3 years.
but that also gives us time to see how this implementation chapter works. So maybe we don't need to make this decision right now, we leave it,
I think. we will,
because,
yeah.
because we
Mhm.
are gonna be coming back and adding some chapters, and so we've got some more time to go. That's, the only other thing is then asking, is Brandy, like, do you have a suggestion? We have this column that's like started, I can't read anything, I don't have my glasses now.
The ongoing.
Yeah,
0 to
on, like,
5 or.
Do you have a suggestion on if we have that sort of those tracking words in there, like, do we take them out? If they've been, the ones that, like, the third column, the started, the upon request. Cause those to me are the tracking words that would be the thing that you would update,
You would want to visit over time.
right?
Mhm.
Well, why don't we take those run out then?
And
And just leave, the priority and the envisioned timeframe. And
And I
not give
think-
any information about current status.
I mean, I would do that, and then we can see how is this working and what makes some more sense as we get this passed and these chapters, projects started and adding other things, because yes, because we are gonna have to add chapters and approve the plan a couple of times, so we actually have those moments to see how this works.
Yeah, like I said, my only suggestion was
Yeah.
just that we give people a guidance of, you wanna
Sure.
know how it's going?
Right, but
Pay
that,
attention.
I think that's
Not that
also.
they shouldn't anyways.
That can also happen not in the plan, that happens in a planning update, you know? There can be other places that
A
happens,
report on the plan.
a report of where things are at.
But where is that gonna happen?
Well, it's not gonna happen in the
I
plan,
know it's not,
It'll
but what
come
I'm
from
saying
Ed.
is,
it's gotta come.
why can't it mention in the plan, in this implementation chapter, where people should be looking for that?
Well,
Go
because
we
pay
don't know.
attention
we
to
don't
the,
know yet, but I mean, it might
but
happen,
I thought the
it might
planning
have-
board's in charge.
well, but not of every single item on here.
Right, but, okay, I guess I thought when we made the matrix, the idea was the planning board would be reviewing these items on an annual basis of checking in that the implementation chapter was actually, I mean, that's why we created it, so that the recommendations were being looked at, being researched, being started, whatever it is, at whatever part. That was kind of the feedback of, it also helped people understand, like, this is a living document, like, we took your money and this is how we're putting it in to use. So that's what, I guess that's where I was kind of thinking.
I don't think that's changed.
I think
What
you
do you
wanna
mean?
know where and how often people are gonna get updated,
Not, and how,
No,
I mean.
that's
I think
not,
it's just an annual review.
So there's an annual review, and
Yeah.
that can
And I'm
be in,
just saying,
that
that's
can
what I'm
be
saying.
in the website, that could be in the town newsletter, that could be at town meeting, I mean. That's gonna be up to the planning board when they are gonna decide to update people on what's happening with the master plan and where things are at. But that's not gonna, it's not gonna change the document,
yes, I know that.
right?
I'm
So,
saying to point people to that direction. Why can't we say how we are going to use this implementation chapter, as in, if it's happening, who's doing it? I know it can be posted all those other places, but we have
Sure.
this
I mean,
giant document we're handing people who might not
Do-
even
do
look
you-
at those.
do you want to say that the planning board will review progress on an annual basis and report to the community?
I don't think you have to say it. You don't have to say that much.
Yeah, I don't think, certainly not. I think
I'm getting
I-
lost in what,
There's an
you're,
end.
I feel like you're saying multiple things, so. I'm gonna get some coffee.
I think I hear what you're saying.
I'm
You
getting
can tell me whether this is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Just like to have something in the master plan that says the planning board is gonna monitor progress on implementation. And monitor is the wide open word that says they can do it and they can report to the town, they can put it on their website, they can do whatever they want. But if people wanna know, they go to the implementation section, and they see the planning board is the one that's gonna be monitoring this, they can pick up the phone and call David Fract and say, where do we stand on this?
And then maybe that's the word to use. Maybe you don't want to say annually. You just say you're gonna monitor it. So
Yeah.
people know where to follow. That's all I'm saying, is give them a
Okay.
guidance
I
of
like that.
where to
Okay,
pay attention to.
Planning board will be monitoring progress.
Yeah,
Period.
and that
Okay.
way we point them in at least,
And-
maybe
and-
they'll
and of
leave some,
course,
I mean, they're still gonna ask questions.
We're going to do that anyway. But
Right.
we're just stating it.
Right,
That's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying.
We
is
know it, but we
You gotta
want
watch
to
it, and manage it
communicate
if you
that.
want it to happen.
Exactly.
You gotta drive
It's
it.
just that whole accountability piece, like, people know how much money we spent. And I think it's well worth it, but they're gonna hold us accountable, so how do we tell them where to go and
Okay,
leave us
so in that introductory paragraph, we want to just work in an extra sentence.
yeah,
Okay.
that's where I would put that.
Okay, Brandy?
Yep,
Don't put a
got that.
timeframe on it. It's just the planning board.
Yeah, just leave it as mine.
Planning board will be monitoring progress.
There's another thing about implementation that I heard Ed say. Or maybe it's the whole plan, but he needs to have a
Yes.
way to reference any particular thing in here when he's communicating to other people. And this is why we're doing this, just to Celi's point, if he's gonna take a direction and go with it, he wants to be able to justify that. And it's hard to do with the way this is presented here, unless we actually numbered every line like we do in our minutes, because at least then he could say on line so and so on page whatever. But it conflicts with the one thing we were trying to avoid, which is implying any kind of priority list.
Let's
for things.
number them and then right at the top say, this is not in priority order and have it
We
over
could
with.
do that,
Because he needs it for budgeting, he needs it for his strategic plan, like you
right?
said, and he needs to tie it back to make the whole thing legitimate and tie together.
He said clearer prioritization is what he said. He needs clearer prioritization.
Oh, I didn't hear
No.
I
prioritization.
didn't say, say that.
He
He
just
wants to reference it.
No, he just wants to reference.
He wants to reference it for budgetary purposes
I heard that
and,
too.
and be able to
I
say,
thought he said prioritization.
no, he said,
I didn't
you
hear
know, like, land use, fourth goal down. That's hard to relate to for people who can't count very well.
I mean, we talked about this before. It is standard practice to number them, and this is why, because of that need to reference them.
And of course, we heard Dr. Buffet jump right in and say something about, the priority, because this is the third item. And that's not what we're implying. So, but we can't get away from it. It's just like the manager's word. Some people are gonna interpret something the way they want to interpret it. We can make a disclaimer up top, no particular order, give the numbers there so that it's easy for someone to open up the document and say, oh, Ed was talking about this item, and there it is, he's right.
So my recommendation would be to number them in the table and not go back and number them in the chapters. There are actually a couple that have been consolidated that appear in multiple chapters that have been consolidated into the table. So that would be, I think, the meeting point between what Ed was asking you for and the concern raised about prioritization. So I think you can do that midway solution so that they can be referenced back to the plan.
I think there was also some discussion about, rather than using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, perhaps using letters or Roman numerals, because they might be less
I think you-
connotative.
I was gonna ask
I
if there
think
was a
you use
psychological-
numbers and you put the phrase not in priority order and have it
Yeah.
over with.
Or, yeah.
Numbers are easier to reference than Roman numerals, it's just easier.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, Roman numerals will not be
Keep it simple.
advantageous,
In
but
parentheses, just
they
say
they can
numbers that needs
be,
to
they can
prioritize.
be numbered by chapter. They can be numbered by chapter, so it can be,
Yeah,
know,
LU.
LU1.
L2, L3, whatever you
Yeah.
want.
so we can do it like that and run them through.
Whatever makes people's brains.
Roman numerals are gonna get out of control.
Uh-huh.
XLIV.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree, just put numbers on them
Yeah, no,
with a disclaimer at the front, that works.
I think what I had heard Dr. Buffet ask was, because one of the very few things that we had is low priority. He was like, is this really low priority? Because we have a priority column as well. That's all. And we only have like 2, 3. We've got 3, but or I see a couple, but he was just really like, is this really a low priority? And we're just gonna leave it because I think the answer is we can't make everything at the top of the list. Something has to fall a little bit further down, and it was ongoing, so.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say if you want to give him a more detailed response on the rationale behind that, I actually, I didn't bring it up at the meeting because I think we wanted to move on from this, but, the conservation one, there was discussion of whether there were sort of any projects in the works or on the horizon, and there weren't, and it's more of an on-demand type of recommendation, right? If an opportunity arose, the Conservation Commission would pursue it, but it is our understanding anyway that the Conservation Commission is not out actively seeking land to work on conservation projects. So they do other things.
Would
So I
that
think
one
in
make
that
sense
case,
then
it's
to, Brandy, would that one make sense to do upon request, like replace the low priority with upon request? You know what I
No.
mean?
Yeah, I
No,
think if
okay.
we get rid of the status column, we just
Okay.
get rid of the status column. But that I think that's the rationale as to why it's a low priority. It's not how your Conservation Commission functions. It's something
Yeah.
they would pursue if an opportunity arose.
Yeah.
What else you got, Brad?
Well, it took us 45 minutes to do 4 comments, so we need to move along. Next one is under maintains. One of the folks was talking about adding health and wellness.
Oh, okay. This was, so we're back at, we're at the
Back to guiding principles
Guiding
under
principles.
maintains.
Yeah, if you wanted to do that, my suggested wording would be to add another phrase in there, supporting the health and well-being of residents. So Enfield recognizes the important role of recreational activities play in creating social ties, supporting the health and well-being of residents, and promoting economic development.
I think we add it and
Sounds good.
sounds
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Next one was under provides. Someone was talking about mentioning the rail trail specifically. And we talked about the fact that it's its own entity, and maybe we shouldn't do that, maybe we should, but that was the conversation.
Like adding it
Under the,
The provides,
provides.
safe roads and convenient public transportation alternatives. We don't provide the rail trail. We don't,
right.
you know,
we get to use it.
we get to use it. It's an awesome entity, but, it's not ours.
So the
I
one
would-
wording suggestion I would have there, some people distinguish trail and path and don't think of them as synonyms. So you could say with trails, paths, sidewalks, and bike lanes. So you could say trail, which I think probably for most people would mean the rail trail in Enfield for the most part. But
Works for me.
Let's add it.
Yep.
Check, add it.
Check.
Last one under guiding principles was under the category of expands. One of the folks last night thought that the expanding housing options was too much of a strategy and should be not at this level in terms of a guiding principle. And also some discussion on changing the word expands to encourage.
so I have a suggestion on that one too. I don't like encourage, but I think we could change the verb to offers. So offers a range. And so that perhaps offer is less triggering to some people than expand.
I like that.
Yep.
Will they interpret that just to, cause this kind of came up, will they interpret that as that, as we got into one of these other things, that the town will be then giving
Yeah, that's how I wondered that. Interpret it.
with the word offers? You know, we had that discussion by something else that's like,
Some people will always go to that interpretation,
Sure,
but
sure,
you,
I don't have a
You know,
problem with expands.
we know that it's
because
not.
We
right,
have data that we've been going through. There's a need in the Upper Valley for housing. Talked about how Enfield has been stagnant. It's not just because the demographics of the nation are stagnant, it's because we don't have housing. And I don't think there's anything wrong saying the word expands, just because some people find it a problem.
what about, and here's just a, what if we take the last sentence in that one? I mean, I know expands is the verb, but just as we start with Enfield will encourage housing where it can be served by existing infrastructure. And then,
Well, you have to remember these all start with Enfield. will
I
be
know,
able to
I
have
know.
that. So you can't, that's not
Can't-
parallel
can't.
construction.
Okay, all right.
I'm good with expands.
I am too.
So I think it refers to housing options, not housing.
Right, exactly.
If you
Yes.
continue reading the sentence, so.
Right, it
That's
isn't
where I-
necessarily a
I'm-
number of units, it's the types of,
Yes,
it's more diversity of the types.
Yeah,
Good points.
Right, yeah, people take to like first part of the sentence and leave out the second half,
Which is
that was,
easy to do.
right,
It's not the sentence.
Or they start reading the document the night before.
there was, in the email I got, there was, for guiding principles, that I had a couple of comments here, and one said, this woman said, she felt there was a very limited mention of economic development in guiding principles, only as secondary to reinforcing New England settlement. I feel like economic development as guiding principles should be a standalone statement. I feel like we've discussed this. And okay. The other one said there's no mention of inclusivity or creating a diverse, welcoming community as a guiding principle. I also don't think that that's true.
I think that's in
it says it.
It's in our vision, and it says it right in the housing, and the last one, and this one, no mention of valuing education, a learning community, creating an artistic culture, or a healthy living community, including improved access to sustainable food and resources for the elderly.
Maybe when we add another chapter, we could add something on that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we could put in, and we really need to lock this thing down.
I feel like there's a lot in that one statement that can
Yeah.
go in different
Yeah.
pieces too, like,
Yeah,
That-
Is mentioned and.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
and then was it, housing?
Well, these were multiple, these were different
Oh.
ones, but this one was valuing education, a learning community, creating an artistic culture, or a healthy living community. And then also mentioned sustainable food and resources for the elderly. So yes, there's a
Yeah.
lot.
Can-
Yeah.
One thing that I don't know, we need to point it out more in the plan, but you may want to sort of have this as something to say when you get to your public hearing. Is that you built these guiding principles very rigorously from the input that you got during the public meetings. And so I guess the question that would be to be brought back is to expand them to things that weren't generated at that meeting that you used to write them. You kind of be back to that community process again, which is, maybe a future cycle you might do. But, for this plan, this is what people told you was important.
Well, that was my thought, that we also asked about, we focused on the 5 or the 5 areas. I know the vision we had, it was a little bit broader, but for the most part, we honed in on economic development, land use, housing and transportation. And that was our, so that we're gonna be, we did pull in energy and heritage because of some of, definitely of the comments. There was a dominant thread of comments in those. We didn't do a lot of asking about education or arts. And there is a potential to be doing that in the future, so it might get added in. I'm just, that's how I viewed it. Like, I don't think we asked or focused on that because it wasn't really pertained to these chapters that we were doing.
And you just said part of it was like health and well-being, right? So we kind of technically would address it with that other insert we've already discussed, so kind of added it in.
I think it's a good thought, but we should add it later when we get to other chapters.
Can you put it in recreation?
Some of that would go in recreation, some of it would go in energy, because that's
Would the-
relates to health and well-being.
Would art go in I mean, is that its own
I mean,
thing?
Well, it can be and it can't, it doesn't, I
You know what I'm
mean,
saying?
it depends on it depends on where it becomes a priority for the town and how the
Yeah.
town wants to deal with it. So in Lebanon, they have made arts part of their recreation department. So they're now arts, parks and and rec, or rec art, art.
Yeah.
So they encompassed the art part.
Yeah.
Because, it's putting art in the tunnel and all these
Yeah.
different things, but that was not there,
Right.
a few years ago. So it's something that can evolve into. I don't think we asked a lot of questions about it, and so I don't think, I think it's something that may come along. I just wanted to put it up there, because if we do have a public hearing and people come, we need to have, why is this not, like,
I mean, I think
This
that's
is the
kind of a
practice.
some of those are like a little bit of a subcategory of, like you said, we focused on the chapters.
Hmm.
Arts is kind of a I mean, it could be its own, but it's really kind of a subcategory of, it could be part of economic development if that's where
It
we
also
wanted to
may
lean to. It
not
could be part of
It may
recreation.
not be where we're at yet.
Right, that's
You
what I'm
have
saying.
to
It's not
have,
the thing,
like,
yeah.
it wasn't in Lebanon. It became, like, being able to focus in on, like, it may not be our priority yet.
I would
Can we agree that it's not gonna go in on this plan and save the discussion on how to integrate it into a future plan for when we discuss a future plan?
I mean, I guess that
Yep.
would be our answer in a public
our answer.
forum, and
Yeah.
it will need to be.
Yeah, Brandy, do we have you until 8 o'clock
for
tonight,
later.
or are you leaving at 7:30?
I can do a little bit longer tonight, but I think we should aim for 7:30.
I think so too. I
do
think
too.
we're on good
Okay.
track. We're on
All
good
right.
track.
Yeah,
So
we've already dealt with most of the really thorny ones,
We
I
need to
think.
chew on this stuff for a minute, because it's gonna come up. If we don't deal with it today, it's gonna come up in the public hearings, and I don't think you want the planning board to have to, since they're not here. So I think that you have to chew on it for a minute. We're all watching the clock. What's next, Brad?
Land use, there was, a discussion, two comments on the phrase, quote, that attracts new residents to our community. One thought was, we need to make it more clear what that really means. And two, do we really want to attract new residents to our community? Those were the two things that I heard.
Gosh, I have such a great answer for that, but I'll wait for a public meeting.
Well, I think that's where
After
I
I sit in budget
mentioned the demographics over the last 3 census. I couldn't hold back any longer.
And the comment came from someone who recently moved into the community.
Yeah.
I mean,
all
yeah,
good.
I
It's
think
good.
that's,
It's good.
yes.
We have to
First
think
of
about
all,
it.
let's go back to the part where we don't have control over what happens in this town. We need to be proactive instead of reacting. So if someone wants to move here, we can't stop them
No.
if there's a place for them to live.
Yes, we do want to.
But you want, I mean, I
But-
think as a group, we want to say, because that's what the feedback was from the survey,
Yeah.
that we want to attract new residents because we are shrinking, ladies and gentlemen. And that's not a good
I don't
thing.
agree with you. I really don't.
We're shrinking. It's facts.
Brandy, you had a good description of the past.
There's different reasons for
Development.
it, but the population is going down.
The population is going down, the tax base is not, as we have found, because people are still owning properties.
Right.
Well, if you think it's gonna go down with a lot more people, you're wrong.
What's gonna go down?
It will go up. 'Cause
I'm
all
not
your
saying taxes will
services-
go down. That's not what I meant. I said, the tax base is the same, because we have people, we have houses that are filled. There just aren't as many people in those houses.
Right.
Like, I own a house, I am one person. I'm not having children and
Yeah,
a
well,
family.
to
and, you
Celia's
know.
point earlier, is
So the
that the
numbers go
kids are leaving, right? They're
Right.
not coming back to the town
But
for one reason.
what? I mean, it does change, obviously. It has a reflection of what happens in the school when you don't have as many children.
Sure.
You don't think it's increasing now,
What?
the population, because people are moving up here, I think, like crazy.
I
Yeah,
would
but are
be,
they moving to Enfield?
that's. the-
Yes.
I
don't
would
think
question though,
so.
there are people moving to Enfield, but they're buying houses that were up for sale and they don't all have kids. So again, you might be talking about, let's say an older couple leaving and it's only a, middle-aged couple that moves in, like they don't have kids, they're not increasing the population, they're just buying a property. So it really doesn't change anything, it keeps the number right there, but You know,
Well, okay, so what did we hear from the community? Do we want to attract new residents or not? What was the data?
I thought the data at least said we want to attract it to new
Right.
residents. Because there will always be a changeover of residents, not
Mhm.
like we're going stagnant.
right, I feel like we got that same mixed message as far as more
Yeah.
new versus,
Yeah, I think
Nothing.
clearly we heard both.
yeah,
Mhm.
but,
Well, yeah, you've got a group of people that wanna get their sewer water bill down. That requires more density and more people to help pay for the system.
Mhm.
But then you've got people that moved in from Washington DC that were horribly crowded and traffic and everything, and they kinda like peace and quiet,
The
not
quieter.
too many people around, you know what I mean? So you got two opinions there.
Yeah.
Of people coming to town.
Yeah, and one of the ways we tried to address that was to talk about focusing the housing growth on the services corridors. We have services that won't compromise the rural character of our.
And if you increase the density in town, hopefully that'll create a situation where there's more people in town and more businesses, more service types of businesses will want to
Exactly.
come in.
Right.
And everybody, I think everybody talked about, revitalizing the villages, right?
okay, that benefits everybody.
That's a very common thing, but you're not gonna attract businesses unless unless you're somebody to go to the coffee shop.
Right.
Mhm.
Do you have the beginning of that sentences?
No, I don't.
This one, it's focus public investment primarily in our villages and along the Route 4 corridor to enhance walkable neighborhoods that attract new residents to our community. What if we, say focus public investment primarily in our villages and along the Route 4 corridor? Full stop.
Wasn't that what somebody actually asked? Meeting to leave off those last?
Yeah.
I think that was a suggestion that ended up coming up, because the walkable neighborhoods comes in the transportation piece. Right?
Yeah, but
But-
like we talked about last
So-
night, so much of this covers
Right,
so many
sure.
different, there's so much overlap, right?
Right.
So, attracting new residents falls into transportation, it falls into economic, falls into land use. It's crazy. I mean,
It's everything.
it's everything.
So this is one of the recommendations that the same basic wording appears 3 times.
Yeah.
So the focus public investment primarily on downtown and the Route 4 corridor, and then explaining why. And it appears in land use, it appears in housing, and it appears in economic development.
I think to change it is a significant change.
Mhm.
Well, and I guess I could circle back to previous conversations we've had too, where if one person makes a statement, is that what we're gonna base a change off of
Right.
versus the
Survey.
multiple feedback?
It's
you
a
know?
survey.
Right. It's not that we don't appreciate their feedback, it's just that we're not gonna sound
Well, I guess-
unwelcoming to new people just because one person would prefer not.
Well,
Or
also, new people
less.
doesn't necessarily mean additional people.
True.
New residents just means changeover.
Celie, I'm interested in why you say no to, you had a reaction here
What,
for attracting new people. What is that, how is that
you
being,
mean by numbers?
yeah, or just
I-
how you're interpreting that, I guess. I'm interpreting it differently.
It doesn't bother me, it's the amount of new people.
Okay,
I just think it will influence not only our, services, but even our recreation. We get too many people, you're not gonna have room on the lakes. All the trails will be busy and, that happens. I've seen it happen, just in a little, over the years with me. And after COVID, it's worse. So, people are looking for that. So you have to be, I think it's a balance what you gotta do. You gotta watch it. You know what I'm saying? If you go and put an apartment building up with 50 units in it, and it's for workforce housing, we might be in trouble with that. You know, maybe we can't handle all those people and children and so on and so forth. I just say, you know, take it, don't jump into the pool without floaters. You know,
Well, remember, Sulie, this is a long-term thing.
I
and-
do know it's a long term.
And you can add 100 people all at once, or you can spread it out
Over
over
time.
10 years.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, you're hardly gonna notice it.
Well, and I think for me, because I hear what you're saying completely. I think though, what we need to hope for is that the folks that will be using this plan aren't just cherry picking one piece. Because that sentence might say that, but we've got a lot of other sentences. We have a lot of other recommendations that say,
Mhm.
protect the water. We have other recommendations that
Right.
say, you know, making sure that where we put housing is where that can sustain it. So we have to, it's going to be up to the public, it's going to be up to the boards and things that are using this, because people will try to cherry pick it, right? They'll go, this one sentence says that you want this, and be like, but does that also hold up to 5 or 6 other checkpoints? And so that's going to be we can't do that in the wording, right? Like,
I understand.
I think that's the hard part here, is that when we look at everything in its own individual vacuum and not go, but there's 10 other things that put checkpoints on this. So, when we read it in its own vacuum, it definitely is like, we just want to build for, you know, I think there's that fear, but it's true that there's people that will do that. And so planning boards, zoning boards, public have to go, hey, just because yes, it fits that one statement, but it doesn't fit these other 10. So a 50, unit apartment building on Potato Road, I don't know. I'm gonna go for your spot. That doesn't have, that can't sustain it. Sure, it might attract new housing, but it's gonna violate other recommendations. So I think it's too hard to, and I don't know if that's sentence, we can't say you have to satisfy 10 of them, I don't know. I think that's the hard part.
And I think,
And I understand what he's saying. You have to keep reminding me that.
I think it's a big deal to ask too. Our people who are our resources, our police chief, before saying we can't handle it, can we not handle it? Because if you think about it, if we take the current state of Enfield and we added 50 apartments, let's say, with my age and younger couples in it, do you think they're hanging out in Enfield a whole lot when there is no bar open past 8? There's no live entertainment. There,
There is.
there's a theater. Sometimes there's music places, but it's a lot less than it used to be. Like post-COVID, things haven't really done that. So I think that's it's a balanced question of like economic development. Are we there to do that? It's not gonna happen without the other, because we're not gonna fill it if
Right.
nobody has, and they won't hang out here anyways. They'll be in Lebanon and just come sleep here. It's just
Right.
kind of that.
You
hand in
need
hand.
another
That'd be a
round.
White River Junction.
Or in White River.
That's for actions.
It is.
Once.
To happen.
I think it's
So, yeah, I
about,
agree.
it's also calling out when people just pick one thing and say, well, you said you wanted this, and also go, yeah, but does it satisfy these other things? And that's gonna be up to the general public, but we can't do that. Here, we have to put forth these different recommendations. Try checking the clock.
I'm always checking the clock.
I'm still waiting for our skyscraper on Shaker Hill.
I know,
Exactly.
but I think it's valid, but we also, when we pull
I
things
understand.
out, it's not just you, but I'm saying we have to know, like, when somebody else comes at it, it's because we heard the comment, and it's not in a vacuum.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay,
Brad,
we're not changing it.
Under transportation, there was a lot of discussion on the phrase transportation systems versus using complete streets. There wasn't there's not a huge understanding of what complete streets really means. There was a discussion about maybe after complete streets, we put a parentheses and give a few examples. We were talking about not including transportation systems and calling it something else. And then I think Ed spoke up and, he liked the phrase transportation system, and that's where we ended, in terms of discussion, but that was really the only thing from transportation that I wrote in.
You mean a not, he wants to end there and not use.
He likes the
streets
phrase
at all?
transportation systems because it covers everything.
So in the recommendations, the phrase reads, prepare and adopt a capital improvement program annually that continues to plan and budget for long-term investments in our transportation system that align with the recommendations of this plan. So, and then there was a discussion on that use of transportation system. And I think folks, they thought that meant the bus line.
Yes,
Because
yes.
they were thinking like, oh, that's a subway or a train station, you know, and not, they weren't actually thinking that that's our roadways and all the different methods. And I suggested making system plural. So that it implies multiple versus like,
It seemed like people understood it better once it was explained.
Yeah.
Right? Once we said, no, that's sidewalks, that's trails,
Right.
that's, you know.
they don't, like, I think that it's that 50,000 feet where it is all one system.
That's right.
Was
Yeah.
it?
They didn't read the chapter, and if they read the chapter instead of that one phrase, they would have understood that it meant everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cause we have that separate recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a
For
second one
complete
that says complete
streets,
streets.
But
implementing
I think we
complete
leave, I think the chapter speaks for itself.
streets. Yeah.
I think so.
I do too.
The one thing that we could add in, I don't currently have a link to something that would provide more information about complete streets. I think I looked, and New Hampshire DOT being what it is, they don't have a nice page that talks about complete streets.
Lebanon does.
But I can find something that would be a good reference point. And so, maybe on page 36 or so, where we talk, which is sort of the first place in the narrative that complete streets comes up, we could make that a hot link to some place that would provide people with more background on
That's a
what
good idea.
complete streets are.
I like that idea.
So my question is,
I was gonna say.
but what if we change system to systems just for, so like, again, we know from 50,000 feet that everything's included in our transportation system, includes all of the above. But if we say systems, people might go, oh, there's multiple things. It just might
Yep.
trigger without having,
Yeah.
it's one letter.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
That,
Okay,
okay.
so plural systems, and Brandy, did you hear Brad's comment that Lebanon has a good thing on complete streets?
Yeah, yep.
And,
I'll look-
what was the other one, Rob? Burlington, Vermont. Great
Burlington
Street.
has a good.
Yeah,
one, too.
Burlington has very good stuff. There's actually, I was thinking there's a national, the Association of, I can never remember, the ICMA folks have one. It's like the Association of Municipal Managers or something like that. I can never remember their acronym, but they have quite a nice website that sort of goes through all of the complete street stuff. Is really nicely illustrated. So something like that, that's sort of like a dictionary.
I would say go for that rather than a certain town.
Yes.
I could,
Yeah.
because I can see as soon as we mention
Yeah,
Lebanon, we're
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
get
yeah.
there. We're trying to be Lebanon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're gonna, might go the wrong way on us, that one.
All right.
The
What
next
else?
one is under economic,
Mhm.
and we talked a lot about, the phrase, you probably have it up in front of you, Lindsay, providing locations, for expansion, and there was a lot of discussion on, do we really want to use the word provide? Should we change that to, different options, promote, informs, identify as opposed to the word provide?
So I'm going to jump in here to try to
Yeah.
steer this conversation a bit.
Great.
That discussion was going off in a side direction, because what this is really talking about is the zoning. So provide, you could change it to designate or something like that, but this is not about, I know there was a lot of discussion of, businesses coming in or people coming in and asking Rob questions and things like that, but this is really meant to be zone some places for businesses in town.
So changing that provide to designate locations
We can
in town?
change provide to designate, yeah.
Okay, because it is the zoning regulations. It's not it doesn't say
Yeah,
Taylor's job is to
right. I mean, if you,
provide
it's once
information, is I
again,
think where we were getting to, yeah.
look back up at the
Yeah.
statement above it, right?
Cause it's ensure the Enfield site plan and zoning regulations, and then this is D. Create opportunities for residents to start home businesses, and when such business grow beyond the residential setting, designate locations in town where they can expand. I like that.
Yep.
Me with that, or it was provide information, so it was like just steer towards, but I think designate makes it simple. A word for word. Okay,
Last thing I had was, one of the general comments that I was thought worthy of discussion was that on page 21, there was some confusion about the word serviced versus unserviced, and I think that's on the pie chart.
Yeah,
So can I jump in here again and say that Kurt had sent you written comments that include more detailed map changes. And I think, David and Lindsay, I sent back to you the things that were more policy changes than just technical corrections to the map. So I did do some of the I did the technical corrections list, but I did not do the policy change list. And so that was a concern raised by Kurt in his comments. I did go back and check that the text repeatedly speaks about being serviced by water and sewer, serviced by water and sewer. So it's sort of a matter of, you know, on the charts in the map, it's kind of a space problem about writing that out. You can't say, you know, serviced by water and sewer and make it fit. So I don't know how widespread this concern is beyond Kurt, but I guess I point it back to you to figure out what you want to do with regard to that.
The only
Okay,
thing I could see is putting a star there in a little box that says serviced by water and sewer, unserviced by water and sewer. Put a star next to each one, there's your answer. If we were spelling it out for anybody. Further.
Right, name in the legend. Spell it out.
well, this is in the legend, so I'll show you, I don't have this up there, but so what he's talking about is right here under the current zoning map, it says community businesses, and then in parentheses it says serviced
Right,
and unserviced.
you could put serviced by water and sewer instead of just serviced in the legend, but then on your pie chart where you don't have room, just have serviced and unserviced, which you'll know what it is by the legend.
What's some pages of map?
Page 21.
That the orange area on the top map?
Yeah, you might be able to get water/sewer service or something like that in there under the current zoning map legend, but yeah, it's gonna be tight, maybe.
What if, as Bridget said, we take out, we take out the word serviced and unserviced, and we do an asterisk or in two asterisks, and then make a, like in this, you can't, I don't know if you can see me, but like in the white space. You know?
Yeah, so
I
the
know it
issue
will
with
look a little messy, but.
well, the issue with the white space is that it's actually the space in between the maps. So it's like the question of what am I going to pull it off? I mean, it's just sort of a formatting
sure.
thing.
Yeah.
I can try to get it in there somewhere on the page, but yeah, we certainly can't say it every single time.
Yeah.
We might be able to squeeze in there and say it once.
Right, where it's like, that's where it would be, or in between those two, under the current zoning map, a star survey, you know, but then it would have to people would have to then inference that it pertains both to the pie chart and to the map, and we just, because we can't put it in everywhere, or.
Yeah.
Or what if we did WTR?
how about W/S or W ampersand?
Water SRV served and WTR.
That's on the-
I know, well,
Let me see if
That is-
I think I'll try to get it into the legend of the current zoning map and see if that will, I could probably pull that in a little bit, make it a little tighter.
it's,
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
he had one other question, Brandy, and I forgot. And this may have been answered. He said that there was no sewer and water map in the plan.
Yep, he asked me about that. We don't have one in there. You'll do it one when you do the facilities chapter.
Okay, great. So, just, um,
The facilities.
Was that it, Brad?
Yes.
that was it. Those are the,
22 after, Brandy.
Well, you still haven't dealt with the mapping questions.
which map, what mapping?
Which
question?
map?
Well, the biggest
Kurt's-
policy one is Kurt's comments on the future land use map. Do you want to do anything with that or not?
I like it the way it is.
Okay, that's the easiest.
I like the fact that you kind of blurred the colors so
Mhm.
that it doesn't look like a zoning map.
Yep.
And it's not really specific. And it's the future, so it's fuzzy.
No, sure.
I think these
And
are,
then-
these are things that came from Kurt
These are
directly.
Rid of the
Kurt's
meeting, is that-
comments.
No,
Oh, in writing.
he did some proofreading, he did not proofreading. And sent along a review, of things from him, and some of these are repeated comments on if he thinks should be on the maps or not. So,
26, actually.
yeah.
So
So
the
that's
other
there.
thing that came up at the meeting, there was a gentleman there, the last name Steve.
What,
Thies?
last name what? Oh, Thies,
Steve?
Dr. Thies.
Thies. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
He commented that his property, which I think is on either side of Bog Road, is conserved. I
in his
don't have,
mind. I think it's conserved in his mind only.
that's what I was wondering, whether because it doesn't show up on the list I have, but that isn't necessarily mean it's not, but I don't have any evidence other than his statement that it is conserved.
Yes, you did. You
It-
did conserve land up there.
Who did he give the conservation deed to?
I don't know, but I know that he did. Maybe he did the Upper Valley Land Trust. But he did put it
It's
in
not on the Upper Valley
conservation.
Land Trust list, but once again, I mean, it's possible that
Okay.
it just got
I
overlooked.
don't know
So
who
Rob,
gave
is
it
that
to.
something you can try to follow up on in the town office to see if indeed that piece has been conserved? There should be something on record if it has been in the land record.
Rob is
Rob
out
is
of,
stepped out of the room.
out of the room.
Oh,
But
okay, I can't tell that from the video.
Maynard is about to take a look at the GIS town map and look at the property.
Yeah,
size.
it does, yeah, an answer isn't there. I can, I can tell you
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think
He
we
has
can,
trusts, but that doesn't tell us anything.
Yeah.
so,
So-
my thing with this, Brandy, is that we will be, working closely with Dr. Thies in the next section. So there'll be opportunities if we can get Rob to look this up and if there's a way to fix it right now. But this is just his property, right? That what he's talking about?
Yes, it
Rob,
is
the
his
question
property.
is Dr. Theis's property truly conserved legally? Or does he just think it is?
He bought the lot next to his house, and I thought he had said that he had put it in conservation.
Maybe he put it in current use,
Current use probably.
which is not conservation.
Maybe he's got it mixed up.
Let's leave it the way it is unless we
Okay,
find out
Then-
otherwise.
there was one other comment on the land use map. And I didn't catch the woman's name, unfortunately. But but it's on Depot Street in,
Uh-huh. Susan Brown.
Susan Brown.
yeah, so, confirmation on whether there's been a change in the ownership of the property or a change in the configuration of that property. She seemed distressed that what she said was her land is showing up as a public facility.
Rob, do you want to speak to that?
So, yeah, that's the end of Depot Street, so state of New Hampshire land, and even underneath our ambulance building is owned by state of New Hampshire DOT. She's worked hard to get about 1/10 of an acre out of DOT, and she's purchased it on her side of the road, right in front of her property, a little triangle. And then Angus, next door to her, is working on the same kind of thing. Ed is actually working for the town to try to acquire the land underneath the ambulance building.
So the, so essentially she has acquired, if one was to
Yes,
just sort of
yes.
draw her parcel lines down to the road right of way.
Correct. It's a
So,
very
okay.
tiny little triangular
Yeah,
piece of
it's a
land.
tiny triangle, but it shows up apparently enough on the map to be distressing.
Yeah. It's a,
When you
Concerns
pull
to
out
him.
it's
your-
a state of New Hampshire, yes.
pull out your microscope.
I was gonna say.
It shows up on the map that's in the economic development chapter. So the map that's on page 45. So that's, I'll change that.
Okay.
The parcels obviously have not been updated since that transaction
It's just
happened.
recent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rob, just
Within
recent.
the last
Very
month or two.
Yeah.
Yep, she's coming to the next planning board meeting for a voluntary merger of this, was the state land to her property.
Okay.
Okay. So those are my only immediate map questions. So the other thing I would ask that you guys do is on the online version, you can see the captions to the photos. It might be good to check through those captions, someone, and make sure that everything there looks right. And then there needs to be a credits page, or, not a page, but on page 3, there's a space for credits. So it would be good to get that into this next version as well. So you guys want to take a stab at getting the credits the way you want it?
Mhm. Anything else we should do?
That's my list.
Okay,
What's our timeline?
You want this before the planning board in December?
December 14th is the next one.
But you need to warn out a hearing and stuff, so were you thinking of having a hearing on December 14th?
no. It would
No.
just be a planning board review on the 14th. And, depending on how it goes, we would either have our public hearing on I think it's the 28th. Yeah, it would be the 28th, or kick it into January.
So I've got some deadlines I'm working through this week, but beginning of next week, I can give you a day before Thanksgiving to sort of make these final round of changes. So if you want to think about what works for you guys to get back to me those couple of items that I asked about, and give you a chance to look through and make sure you don't want any changes to captions and things like that. So someday next week, 21st, 22nd, something like that.
Okay. We will do our best. to Get stuff to you.
Okay.
Anything else? We got you out of here at 7:30.
Thanks, Brandy.
Excellent timing. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, Brady mentioned a whole bunch of Kurt's comments that were in essence policy changes. Do we want to discuss them or consider that we beat policy to death?
What do you mean their policy changes? Can you
elaborate
on?
If I can find his,
Seen it.
it was, Rob, do you remember Kurt's changes went to Brandy and then,
I have them right here.
You
I don't
do?
know what that's his
Okay.
document. And, cause he emailed them to me and I just sent them along. I didn't look at them.
that's kind of where I'm at.
Um,
Okay, so. So he wants roadmaps. No mountain being cut off at the edge of a page. I assume that's a. These are just silly.
That'll be
technical
fixed on her
Yeah,
magazine
yeah.
style thing, I
Right.
bet.
changes.
I couldn't find that link.
Indian River and Mascoma River colors are too similar. Okay, his question was, what is common land? How is it determined? Seasonal residential, why include this? And he wants to scale back the business areas next to 89, exit 16, 15, and 14 due to topography and town roads, not being able to handle the types of businesses that would want to locate there. He was not clear on the area between I-89 and Methodist Hill. Is that area J? What is the area from Shaker Hill Road, Lock Haven Road to the Canaan Town line? Area from Lock Haven Road to 4A.
these are all map
I mean,
questions,
these are,
right?
yeah,
So,
these are,
and they're pertaining to individual maps, right?
I think so.
Okay.
It sounded like she had response to most of them.
think
Yeah,
she
I don't
had-
know what the policy change.
Yeah. Policies. He didn't know what the map on page 44 to 45 is. I don't see an awful lot of discussion items there.
There's map issues.
Right, I can try and find where responses, but,
44 to 45, the village business and land use map, which is what the key says.
Don't know.
I mean, that's what it says at the top of 44, so
And what is the map itself?
it's. I'm sorry, that's not my phone, it's just kind of it's that mix of commercial, mixed use,
Oh,
multi-residential, single
yeah.
unit, like the kind
Yeah,
of colorful.
Yeah. What is the use of it? To show the village area?
I don't know.
Does it have a title or a key?
Does he?
It has a color key.
It has a key, village business and land use map.
Yeah, right at the top.
I mean,
I don't know if he was wondering, because maybe the town doesn't have, but it says it was prepared by PlaySense, like that was Brandy,
Yeah.
PlaySense. So my guess is that we don't have a map that puts both of those things together, so she.
all right,
Yeah.
here's what she
Yeah.
said. I reviewed Kurt's comments on the maps and have the following responses. His issues with parts of the maps being cut off is because they are not intended to be printed. The PDF is not intended to be printed. They are intended to be viewed on a screen. We discussed this when the task force first reviewed the layout. The decision was to have the larger format maps that would extend across 2 pages. I can get you a set of maps as individual 11 by 17 maps if you want a printable set. I do not recommend adding more road names to the maps. More text will only make the maps busier and more difficult to interpret at this scale. So that's a comment that we've been getting from individual people, like they want their roads or, you know. So the task force needs to decide if it wants A, a street map in the plan, and B, to make any of Kurt's proposed changes to the future land use map. Those are not simple corrections edits. Water resource map. Kurt's note to change the name of watershed number 2 is not correct. The watershed is labeled as per the official names from the New Hampshire watershed boundaries. Data set. Transportation map. The roads are classified as per the tier assigned by the state in the New Hampshire roads data set. Kurt's note that Lock Haven Road and Shaker Hill Road are local connectors is not correct. So the only thing is, do we want a street map in the plan, and do we make any of his proposed changes to the future and land use map?
I think a street map might better fit in with town facilities, maybe. I mean,
What would be the purpose of a street map?
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that would be.
So he's
Find that online, so.
road names,
Google
the
Maps,
maps.
baby.
He says, add a street map showing all the roads in town, public and private, with their names, a driving map.
No,
No,
Oh,
no,
That was his comment. I don't think
I feel like, right?
Okay,
I don't,
that's what
the
Atlas.
directory has it.
Google Maps.
Yeah. All right, and then so the word sheds, and then its current land use map, what is common land? How is it determined? Seasonal residential, why include this? Because it's a delineation.
What map,
Right.
what map?
So
is
the
it?
current land use,
Current.
what is common land? How is it determined? So,
what page are we on?
I don't know, I have to find it.
18 and 19.
Great, thank you.
There's a reference to common land, real light green.
So he wants to know on that map what the purpose of seasonal residential is versus.
On land use, current land use, what is common land? Quote, in quotes, common land, how was it determined? There's two questions there.
Okay.
Anybody find common land on the map?
I was about to say that color green, I can't necessarily find that.
This is on the current land use, not future land, sorry, current land use.
Right,
Yeah.
page 19 and 20.
I think it's. I've got it as page 18.
I got 18 and 19.
18 and 19, I'm sorry.
Okay,
What are they looking for?
We're looking for that very light green common land. Ah, I see it. I see it.
Is it an easement?
Um,
On the way to easement?
no, it looks like it's. I can't read that, but that looks like it.
it's near Methodist Hill,
What page?
and so
18,
it's on page 18. It's,
let me zoom in.
That's a piece of land that the
it's,
town has taken for taxes, that the
Are you looking at the
Conservation Commission.
PDF or the magazine? Because the magazine you can zoom in and zoom.
yeah,
Well,
I need to.
I
I
can zoom
pull
in
up.
on the PDF really well.
Well, but I'm on a different page of the
Yeah.
magazine.
Oh, are you?
Yes, because yeah, so you can zoom in really
The
well.
Magazine page is actually 20.
Okay.
green, right?
Okay.
But where are you finding it?
So
Where-
he's
I
talking
think that would
about,
be it,
he's talking about that little
off
piece
of
right there.
Methodist Hill.
And that's called what?
And some of this.
Oh,
one,
it's a
right
common
there, and
one.
there's another one that where?
Eastman.
And he's.
Is that next to Fieldstone Ridge? Did they designate some land as common for the development?
It could
I don't
be.
know.
There's a road in with a lot of.
I'm not sure,
dots
I'm
on
not
it,
really
like
sure
housing
where it
on
is.
That could be it.
It looks like it's right next to Fieldstone Ridge, which is the housing development that was built on Methodist Hill,
Yeah, that's what it is.
and it, right behind Whaleback. And I
Yeah,
would say
that's
that
it.
when they
Okay.
did the development, they designated inaccessible land as common land to the development.
So is it just a matter of adding, a note of what common land is? Is that, do we have to add a definition? You know what I mean? Maybe, do you know what I mean?
It's just a very small piece of land.
Well,
There might be one.
would
It is
that
a very
be-
small piece of
Would
land.
that be common land as in a cluster development?
What is that?
So cluster development would be, say you had 100 acres. And we give you, in exchange for only developing 10 acres with higher density. The other 90 acres gets conserved, becomes common land. And is available for the residents of the development to recreate on.
They all share in the ownership.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's an owners association and it's managed by the owners.
And I feel like the other,
Typically, it has some kind of permanent easement.
It says private, common land, private conservation, so.
I feel
That's it. We have some in Plainfield near Home Hill.
like there is a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a little tiny bit in there. So I think the question is it's in the map. Do we, is it a matter of adding a hyperlink? So you click on common land and it pulls out what the definition is. I mean, is it a matter of defining it? If somebody goes, what's common land? Is that for, you know,
For me,
I mean,
Tell them to call Rob Taylor.
There we go.
I mean, it's not like there's a lot of it in town
there's not.
and
None of
I
it.
would just leave it.
Okay.
And people,
they have a question, we'll answer.
I mean, if people are interested in what common land is, they could probably Google it and get a definition.
I guess and his question was, how is it determined? So, all right. That just,
Okay, and what was his
all
other?
right. Seasonal
Seasonal.
residential, why include this?
So it says our resident number is 4,458 people or something like that. Is that full-time or is that inclusive of all?
I believe that number is people who live here 181 days a year or more.
So does it change with these seasonal residential?
Our numbers change every summer.
That's what I'm saying, yeah, that's what I'm saying, so
Yeah.
why include it? Oh, right there, that's.
I mean,
It-
that's always the hardest part is that we have seasonal people that sometimes stay here all summer or, you know, but,
Right, it's an important aspect of our town that we understand.
yeah.
That seasonally, our population changes.
um,
That's why it's included.
Yeah, but there's some big tracts of land that don't appear to be anywhere near any body of water.
The one up on Choate Road, up there, the big one,
Yeah,
that's my neighbor, it's a hunting cabin, that's it,
Hmm,
45 acres. So he owns this area
Seasonal residential.
5 days a year.
yeah,
Like a can.
you got it.
Can't,
Yeah, I mean, this isn't really related to population, it's showing the percentage of land that is seasonal, right?
Yeah.
So like, why do we need to?
I mean, well, this is our current land use.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
you know, if it's a big enough tract of land that she could identify it as having a cabin on it, I don't see any reason to not have it. Or to lump it in with residential, which would be the other alternative.
Yeah, say if you didn't put it here, then but we also, on there's also single unit residential.
The one that's on
Multi-unit
Lake
residential.
Common, but it's the conservation. Commission.
So I guess the answer would be it's land use. it's a use of that piece of land.
Yeah.
Because we name out all the other pieces like multi-residential, single residential,
Yeah, I have no problem with it.
and
Good
Civic.
information.
Okay. So his other, ones on the future land use map, which is on page what? I don't know. Future land use map is on,
24,
yeah, 24, and so it might be
mostly 25, but
for key. And the comments were from Kurt. Should scale back the business areas next to I-89 exits 16, 15, 14. The topography and town roads will not be able to handle the types of businesses of, so that's a policy question, so that's what she's talking about. This is future land, so he's saying we shouldn't identify that as land that is. So E, F, and G, I think is what it is, 89, and he's saying that businesses will not be able to build there, so we should make those blurbs smaller.
I guess I can see what he's saying in the, it could be misleading. So we've talked about like wanting this to be, future businesses coming in. If he's going from it could be misleading where a business is like, oh, there's a really large chunk of land there that I could build, and then it's just a misleading thing where they talk to people and realize, well, there's not really that much usable land for what I want to build there. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's like Stearns down in there, isn't it, on
Yeah,
G?
that's just for the
But,
buyer to figure out. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
I don't think there's anything misleading.
Some of that land, if you're gonna put in a mountain bike range, it'll work just fine.
Depends on what the business is.
so yeah,
What your business is.
I think if it's an accurate representation of land that is just for that, then
It's a
leave
swag.
it. It's a piece of land.
Give business an idea that, hey, maybe there's a possibility here.
Go scout it out,
Yeah.
because that's what you need to do. All right.
Rob has nothing to do.
That's Rob. Is the area between I-89 and Methodist Hill Road J? So I think he's referring to over on the left-hand side, so page 24,
Yep, I see it.
says J. Methodist Hill is more connected to, and then that area is. Huh? I think, is he talking about like this area that's clear that says rural? Because the J's in the yellow. Maybe he's just, is that whole area on the
Methodist Hill.
other side of 89? We've got E, F, and G, you know what I'm saying? Like, so is J just the yellow, or is J include that whole space?
Yeah, because you have rural
J just includes that whole, the
resource
yellow, 'cause it's
protection
Methodist
and
Hill.
residential. And
Well, E, F, and G are the areas that are centered around the interstate exits,
I would
which
say
have
J
a
is-
potential for business. And the J is a rural area, which is
Okay.
not suited for business.
I think-
It's residential.
But it's,
Currently, it's R5, I think.
but where it's listed, where I think maybe it just means that placement is a J, you think? Is that
I
what
think he's
saying?
asking, if,
Right.
I don't know if you can see, I can't. I think he's asking, is just this yellow spot J, or is this whole
Yeah.
area J? And
So
I
then
think
that are-
just this yellow spot, just the yellow, like where Methodist Hill is J. And this white here, which is rural, is not included in Methodist Hill.
Is that white, the ski area by any chance?
No.
No.
What is that?
You have to pick a side of the road.
Looks like
And
Yeah,
big valley going down.
I mean, it might.
I
it
think
might
it's
be,
like,
but-
he's
That's what I
identifying
was
here.
thinking too.
So we could also pick right,
Is
and
that
it would
just
also
a-
be correct, but I don't think it's that's.
You don't think it's this whole
That's
section?
Rice Road
think
that's
it's right
on there.
According to
It
the-
is, you're right.
So
I think this is purposely vague. I mean, isn't it supposed
Yes.
to be?
Yeah. It's very fuzzy. It's the future.
And,
they
and
just logged all of that.
Yeah, I think this is purposely vague and that's the way it should
Yeah,
be.
well,
And to say certain sections shouldn't be in that or that, the margins on this are wide.
Yes.
you
Right.
know, And so we're not worried about that detail about whether this section between 89 and Methodist Hill Road is developable or not. That's an unimportant.
So then, again, we're just gonna slog through this real, there's not much more. What is the area from Shaker Hill Road, Lock Haven Road to the Canaan Town line? What is it? Yeah, on the future map, so here is, again, Shaker Hill. I think it's this white, which is says rural.
It's rural.
Which nobody's gonna put a business.
Right, so it's,
Well, I
I
guess
think
it's
he's
more
asking
business.
like this spot, that big white spot up there. I mean, there's people that live there, that's Sealy's territory, that's what it is, we're gonna put in a K
Either
and say
23 or
it's Sealy's.
25, depending on what,
Sealy's area,
I mean, on the magazine, it's 25, but
yeah,
it's here.
It's in,
Okay.
okay.
That looks rural.
You know what, when, I'll tell you, when you print it out, the colors
Rural.
don't look like it does on the magazine. If
Yeah.
you go to the
That's
magazine
right.
and you zoom
Rural.
in, rural is
Right.
very obvious.
Right.
Yeah, it's
It's all rural.
yeah. Okay. And he made these comments before the magazine area was
difference in the
available. And I think it's that like,
Oh, yeah,
I mean, this is the bottom
It's-
down here.
yeah.
what's happening
can
is
see
that
whites.
some
You can see
places
whites.
have,
You don't really
so
see it.
there's like an I central, but there, I think maybe, and again, that he's just going, well, this doesn't have any. We're not saying what this is, but it's rural area,
It's
it's,
rural.
okay,
It's
I
rural.
mean, rural is basically non-defined.
That's right.
okay. And so,
Mostly forested.
Sealy's place,
That would be rural.
hands off. Okay,
And what was his other question?
what is the area from Lock Haven Road to Route four
It's
A?
the same thing.
No, that's residential,
That's,
is it not?
Lock Haven Road to 4A.
Lock Haven is a lot of,
Wait, Lock Haven doesn't go to 4A. Well, it does eventually, but.
Oh, Lock
Yeah.
Haven does not go to
No,
4A.
no,
doesn't.
he must mean Shaker to 4A.
must be, because,
See how different our colors are?
yeah.
Well, that's because
Just-
different monitors.
No,
I
this is the
think
magazine.
Oh.
that anything that's in
This is not
white,
the PDF.
he's like,
It's the
Okay.
magazine.
I think anything that's in the white is what he, and because there's no letter there, so we have, it's not being talked about in the sidebar.
so that might
Is
really.
probably what's raising question for him. That's all I can think of.
Right.
Cause then the last one is 4A Bog Road to I-89. Should be called conservation area.
I don't have a problem with it.
So he's saying everything on the east side of Bog Road is conservation area?
So that's George Hill Road, on
Between
the,
Bog Road and George Hill Road?
no, between Bog and, 89, which we have is resource protection and recreation, but it also includes Eastman. Okay,
Yeah, down.
Oh,
so
I see.
that isn't conservation. It isn't conservation.
I mean, to be fair, that whole stretch of Lock Haven too, well, a chunk of it says rural.
Yeah.
Bit technical, we are rural, so that counts.
Right, and Bog Road, out Bog Road in George Hill is
Yeah.
rural. It's rural residential. I guess it's like, I think maybe that's, I don't know, like, there's people who live out there, but it's not. It's a little bit more spaced
I
out.
mean, there's a lot of houses on George Hill. Maybe that should be more residential, but. Again,
Slow
this
down
is
the hill.
future.
That's what
Yeah, I
you're
guess
looking
that's
at.
an interesting, without more background on what he's asking for there, it's hard to really answer his question. But again, it's future.
The way I'm interpreting it is that like, because we've got letters in, like, we've defined some spaces and then we've got some large swaths
Mhm.
here, which mostly are rural, that don't have any reference in the side key. Is like, what are those, is how, it seems like that's what we pointed at.
Which I would agree, then he is definitely talking about Lock Haven, because that
Yeah,
whole top,
and
portion
we're
of the road
not,
doesn't have
we
a
are
letter.
not advocating
But, yeah.
for, like, these other places. If you read the sidebar, it's like, there's opportunities, there's some underdeveloped land, like, we're not looking to build in all those rural areas or whatever for, residential planning areas is what we've defined. And we're not defining those rural areas as residential planning areas because they are rural.
You know,
And there's a lot of wildlife corridors
And Celia lives
and a
there.
lot of slope and wrong soils and
Without talking the zoning and planning, you're not
Right.
messing with it anyway.
so they're not actually what we're looking at for residential planning areas because we also want to keep our rural character. So, okay. I think that,
Explain it.
thank you.
That at least provides a good rationale that we can explain to Kurt.
Right, because you're
Yeah,
gonna
Because he
get,
will ask.
you're gonna get this when you are talking with the planning board. And they're picking this apart. I'm assuming. But wait,
There's
y'all are on
three-
the planning
there's
board,
three of
right?
us.
Okay. Shut it down.
And 4 of them, and I think we can defend
Get all
ourselves.
prepared now.
I'll come.
All
No, Phil, you can't be out of town. Okay, you're committed.
And then the other one is that we don't need citations. Don't need references. All right, I think that's all we had from Kurt, and I think that, appreciate the comments. There were other, reading things that we sent along to Brandy. But for the most part, like all of the comments that we really got were, this is really great. People did, pick on a word here and there, but that's not,
No war stuff.
not a ton of,
I found like one thing reading it tonight that again is like add a letter. Under the community engagement, the summer 2021, it says farmers market. I'd love for that to be plural. Cause we all spend time.
send that comment, because that's a proofreading. We'll add that
I
under
know, say, I know
proofreading.
it's like a proof.
So just send it to Brandy. Because that's just, I
Like
get
it's
it.
stupid,
Nope,
it's
it's
super minuscule. I just wanna be like, no, we really tried.
Yeah, and
A lot of times.
We did.
I think that's part of like the stuff that we did, right?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, we had a list that we put out the other day. So we need to make sure that it's all correct in here, that we did 4 educational series, that we did 3 visioning sessions. We did multiple farmer markets. So, yes, you're correct.
it's for whatever reason struck me differently.
No, it's, I saw it when we did it on there and I made sure that we got it for, I thought of you. We went to a lot of farmers markets.
Everybody for all the time.
You want this?
Okay. What else are we gonna talk about, people? Anything?
Are you guys doing the credits? We don't to participate.
That
That was just the
I
one.
have no idea what credits for what.
Photos?
Yeah, I don't know
Photos?
anything about it.
No, well,
That was the section
no.
that she said wasn't done.
Credits, like,
on
thank you
page-
to the planning board and the MPTF and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
on like page 3 or.
I'll take a stab at that.
Oh, yeah.
I'll send it to you.
Spelled
The
A-Y.
portion that says credit
What?
to be added.
Spelled A-Y, Lindsay.
She wanted something about
The picture, yeah.
descriptions or what?
Yeah, check the photo credits and make sure that they're correct.
There's a picture in there that I don't know where it is.
Is this the one?
It's the one with it's the archway with all the stones.
That's the bridge on the rail trail under Shaker.
Yeah.
Right,
didn't know
right
either.
downtown.
I didn't know it either.
Oh.
If
I
you
had
go
to-
to the
So
entrance
that's the
park
one, if you go from
by the
Depot Street.
laundromat,
Yeah,
to get on the rail trail,
yeah,
don't head towards Lebanon, head towards Canaan. And
Yeah.
you will walk right under that tunnel.
no kidding.
So that's the one that goes under Shaker Hill Road. So either from Depot Street or
Okay.
or the laundromat. That's that little bridge. Yeah,
Never knew that.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
I make a motion.
Okay, Brad has made a motion. Who's gonna second it?
Second.
Phil, all right, all in favor of adjourning? Aye.
I
Opposed?
was gonna say, I think that we should do this in beginning of January and not try to squeeze it in. It might look shady to squeeze it in on the 28th.
What is the shadiness?
That